Hey everybody, welcome back to RCwithAdam. My name is Adam and today we're taking a look at the Fokoos Odin-5 3D printer. Is it any good or is it trash? Find out right now. Welcome back everybody. Bottom line up front, the Odin-5 has a lot going for it, but it has one fatal flaw, which I will reveal at some point in this video, so make sure you watch every second of it, is what I would say if I was a jerk and wanted you to watch the whole video. The truth is, the Odin-5 doesn't really have a fatal flaw. It has a few quirks, and part of that is because it is a new printer to the market. Those quirks are not something that would necessarily, make this a bad printer, but it's kind of like, what do you want to maximize most for your 3D printing experience? And so we're going to talk about the good stuff, the bad stuff, what I like, what I don't like, all that stuff right now. Bam, disclosure time. Fokoos sent me this printer. Did they pay me a bunch of money to say good stuff about it? No, they didn't. They did send me the printer, but I don't have to say anything good about it. Okay, enough talking. Let's get on to this, which actually involves more talking. So let's do more talking right now. Let's get the most important thing out of the way. How much does this thing cost? Right now, it's going for around $270. You'll see it for a lot more on Amazon, but then there's like an $80 coupon or something. So, but I would say don't pay more than $280 for this. Probably. I think the price that they have is pretty fair because the Odin-5 is what you'd call feature-rich in the biz. It does have quite a few nice features. Let's talk about some of the features and specs, and I will have the specs up on the screen because I don't remember all of those, but I will talk about some of the main features. Now, the main claim to fame that this printer has is that it's folding. That's right, it's folding, and that's why I said, whoa, that's pretty cool, because look, let's be real, printers are kind of a dime a dozen now, and they're all this kind of basic same design with the, the i3 design, I think is what it's called. The other printers that I have, CR10, the Ender 3, I recently moved them and packaged them up, and it's like you have to disassemble a lot and then, reassemble it and then, go through the calibration process and all that stuff. So being able to take out 2 screws on each side and then fold the whole assembly down is pretty great. Now, granted, I don't travel with this thing on a regular basis, but it's a feature that I like. The other great features that I like about this is that it is direct drive instead of Bowden style of extruder. Personally, I just like that more than a Bowden style. And then it also has a filament break sensor, so if your filament runs out, it will stop the print, which I don't know how useful that is all the time. It has a pretty nice hot end. I'm not totally sure on the specs on there, but it seems like it seems better than, say, a Creality Ender 3. It does have silent stepper drivers, or stepper motor drivers, so the operation of the motors is just about silent. It's very, very quiet. It does have fan noise, which we'll talk about in just a minute. It also has dual Z-axis guide rods, which is pretty sweet. Again, I don't know that I have personally noticed a difference in my prints, like where I've been like, oh man, I need another Z-axis guide rod. But, it's going to increase the rigidity and the stability of the X-axis as it prints. Or, well, I mean the Z-axis, but anyway, I also really like the overall styling, compact design that they have here. I love these ribbon cables because it's just so much cleaner than having a big, wire bundle. It has a much wider like dual guide channel for the print bed, for the Y-axis on the print bed. So I really like that. It seems like it'd be way more stable, so you wouldn't have as much wobble. That's very nice. Speaking of the print bed, it is heated, which is pretty standard now. The glass bed is really great. This I think it's called a lattice glass. It's actually working very, very well.
Ooh, there we go. Popped right off. Ooh, look at that. You can still see the marks from where the benchy went on there for that very first time. It was too close. Tell you what, I'm going to turn this fan off. Ooh, nice. Popped right off of there.
Now, the bed is manually leveling. You can put a auto leveling system in here. I have not done that, but apparently you can integrate that in there. Auto leveling would be really nice, but I think for this price point, usually most printers don't have that. The touchscreen interface is very nice. Takes a little bit of getting used to, like any new interface, but it's quite functional, and so I like that. And it's color, so colors are fun. Another really big reason why you might want to get this printer over another printer is because it comes almost totally assembled. There's minimal assembly required. Now, here's the thing. You still have to have a brain to put this together, and you kind of need to know what you're doing, as I showed in my unboxing video, because you do need to like tighten up, some of the belts, tighten up some of the wheels, little stuff like that. You have to go through the setup process like you would for any printer, but you don't have to attach the gantry to the actual printer unit. You don't have to install the guide rods, things like that. Like way better than like a kit. If you buy like a Creality Ender 3, then you're going to have to do quite a bit of assembly. If you buy a Ender 3 V2, you're still you might have to do a little bit less assembly, but still quite a bit more. If you like to tinker, that can be a great thing, and it's not really a big deal, and you can save some money that way. But if you really don't want to have to, mess around with stuff or tinker with things or possibly put things together, then take them back apart, then this could be a better option for you. But it's not like you just pull it out of the box and you just magically press a button and start printing. It does take some work on your part still. Now, let's talk about some of the bad things. Another reason why you might not want to buy this printer is because it's new to the game. It doesn't have a lot of infrastructure. It doesn't have a bunch of firmware iterations or updates or even like physical modifications that people have already designed that you can add to this thing, like other printers such as the Creality Ender series. And so let's talk about some of the newness and the quirks that come along with that I've found with the Odin-5. And now we get to the biggest problem that I found with this printer. I spent a lot of time trying to get the good slicer settings in Cura. And I did. I finally got some slicer settings that I was like, yeah, these are pretty good default settings. I would feel confident about printing just about anything using these settings with maybe a few little modifications. So that was good. And I will have those available on my website. I'll put a link down in the description of this video where you can go get those. Now, first of all, as of right now, as of the making of this video, there is not a profile for this in Cura, in the Cura slicer. You're probably familiar with that. It's like one of the most popular slicers. That's what I use. And you can't just like select your printer. And for the people that this is targeted at, that could be very confusing because it's already confusing enough to get the slicer software going and try to navigate through that with the slicer settings, but then to not have an actual profile set up for this printer, that could be very difficult. Now, Fokoos does have their own slicer, and they provide that on a little SD card that they send with the printer, which is basically like a flavor of Cura. They kind of just took the Cura thing and then like put kind of their own little like logo and spin on it. But it's only for PC, and I usually use a Mac. Now, I did have an old Windows laptop, so I did manage to try that slicer, but the results that I got with that slicer were not very good. I put in my own models into that slicing software, sliced it using the default settings, because I'm thinking like, well, okay, it's the default settings. It probably won't be like amazing, but it should be good. It should be as good as the printer can print for the default settings, and it wasn't very good. So even with the Fokoos slicer, it didn't turn out very good. What I ended up doing for the slicer is I used a modified profile of the Ender 3 on Cura. So I got that straightened out, but it took like a lot of effort. Like, I'm not a 3D printing wizard by any stretch, okay? But I've done a lot of 3D printing compared to someone who has done zero 3D printing, and this is their first printer. And honestly, I think if somebody had the experience that I had with this printer and they didn't know anything about printers, they would have like returned this thing, and they would not be happy about 3D printing. So I don't know, maybe that was just me, maybe it was just my experience. Let me know in the comments, because I have seen some other videos of people reviewing this, but it seems like most people did like a unboxing first impressions video and then printed something kind of like I did, and then they printed something that had come on the SD card as a test print, and it turned out like super great. And so it kind of seems like maybe Fokoos like worked extra hard to get those prints like super good, and then they maybe didn't for some of the other slicer settings, and I don't know. I'm not sure what the deal is there. In summary, the slicer was very difficult to work with this printer, but I think I got it figured out for you guys. So I will have the settings down in the description, a link to those, and you should be able to download the Cura profile that I used. Also, I may make a video of getting this thing set up on Cura and doing some of your first prints and stuff. Okay, the most noticeable bad thing about this printer is the fan noise. Okay, it's not like the worst, but if it didn't have the fan noise, this thing would be like totally quiet. It's loud enough that I wouldn't want to be filming videos when it's running in the same room, because it's just kind of that high pitched. Now you'll notice this extruder assembly looks different than it might in pictures. That's because I've taken off the yellow plastic cover, and I've taken that off because it got in the way of the cooling fan, and so the air flowing through the cooling fan past that shroud, that cover, causes it to be much louder. And so I found that I could make this cooling fan a lot quieter by just taking off that cover. And you don't really have to have the cover. It looks nicer if you have the cover, but as long as you don't have like people trying to poke this thing while it's printing, you don't really need a cover.
This is how it sounds at idle. So we have the fan running for the heat break, and then we have the fans keeping the electronics cool. Now, here is the print cooling fan. Let's go to 50% and then 100. So 50%. It's actually not too bad. Now 100. Then it gets much worse. Now, we will turn off the printer. And I'm going to remove this yellow shroud by removing 3 M3 screws. Just wiggle the cable, this flat cable, out of the connector there. And we'll pull that out. And then we can just slide the shroud off of here. And that's what the shroud looks like on the inside. So there's nothing to the shroud. It's just kind of there, and it weighs a decent amount. So it would be better to just take that weight off of this extruder head anyway. And then here we have our fan. So this sucks in the air. So this yellow piece down here below the fan, it has an opening right below the fan, and the air goes straight from this fan down through this duct and gets directed onto the print. So it cools the plastic as it comes out of the nozzle. Let's plug this back in and listen to how it sounds without the shroud on. 50% fan to 100% fan. It's noticeably louder, but it doesn't have that really high-pitched sound. So if I hold the duct up to the fan, you hear that? You can hear how loud it is. It's very loud and unpleasant. You want to make sure you don't get like hair, or like if you have long hair, don't get your hair sucked in there. Anything else, or pet hair, or keep stuff away from the fan. So that is like kind of where the shroud would help, but not even really that much.
Most of the actual fan noise comes from the electronics cooling fans in the printer base. And so there's an outlet on the back and intakes underneath and on the side. So I may look into modifying that to get this thing to be like really quiet, because it could be super quiet and that'd be great. Now, here's something interesting. What I found was that the reason why so many of the prints were failing and not turning out well, especially models that had bridging or overhangs in them, was because the cooling fan was actually way too powerful. Usually with 3D printers, the cooling fan is not like powerful enough, or the duct that comes with it is just like too broad, and it doesn't cool properly. Well, with this one we had the opposite problem, so it was causing the filament to be pushed off course and downward as it was printed, and it just turned out terribly for overhangs and bridging. And it took me a long time to figure this out, because I was thinking like, well shoot, I mean usually people say, oh, if you want to get good bridging, you got to turn up your cooling fan so that way it cools the filament in midair as it basically prints over nothing, and then you can bridge that gap in your print. Well, that was not the case with this, so I had to turn it down from, I think it was set to like 100% as the default. I turned that down to about 20 or 15%. Below 15%, I think the fan just won't reliably start. It's just like not enough current going through the fan, but you can actually spin it by hand and then get it going. But yeah, if it's like below 15% throttle basically on the fan, then you're not going to have a reliable fan turning on experience. Now, a few weird things that I've had happen with the printer that I maybe it's just me, but I want to let you know about it anyway. There have been a couple times when I told it to stop printing, and it just kind of like wouldn't stop printing. It just kind of like keep on going, and I'm like, no, stop printing. But then the print head was like moving like super slowly, and it was just like going way slower than it should have, which is kind of weird. I just had to do a hard reset and hit the off switch and then turn it back on, and it worked out okay. I could have continued the print because you can restart the print after the power goes out, but I didn't want to do that. So after that, it worked fine, but I thought that was weird, and I hadn't had that happen on any of my other printers. And then I had a time when it was going through the filament loading process, and it would heat up the nozzle and then extrude the filament, and you can't do that manually. You have to go through the menu option to do that, and it just kind of kept extruding and just kept extruding and extruding. And I don't know if I hit the button like too many times or what happened there, but it was kind of weird. So I had to like exit. I think I had to exit out of the whole. I might have had to do a hard reset for that as well. Yeah, just like little quirks like that. It's not a huge deal, but probably something that Fokoos should work on streamlining. Now, once I got all of the slicer issues worked out, or at least mostly all of them worked out, it was actually printing very nicely, very consistently. It stuck to the glass bed very well. Once I got everything leveled and all that, I got some really nice prints out of it actually. Now, mostly I was using 3D Fuel Pro PLA filament. I really like that stuff. I did try printing with some flexibles as well. The Ninja Flex, which is very, very flexible, it's like some of the most flexible stuff that you can print with. It didn't turn out super great. I need to tweak the settings for that. I think I need to increase the flow rate, but that's kind of to be expected because that's a little bit more of a specialty type of filament. I also printed with SaneSmart TPU, which is a very popular TPU, especially for FPV drones, making GoPro mounts and things like that. It prints very well. It's not super flexible, but it is quite flexible for what it is. We did see quite a bit of stringing, kind of some blobbing, and just it wasn't a very good print. It was usable, but not a very good print. At least it finished and it was able to work, but I needed to do some tweaking to that slicer setting for that print. Otherwise, it worked out pretty well. Well, there you have it, everybody. The Fokoos Odin-5 3D printer. Was it any good? You tell me. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments. And if I forgot anything, sorry about that. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to a 3D printer. There's like a lot involved with them, to be honest with you. So my hat's off to you 3D printer reviewer people who are very detailed. You probably have more patience than I do. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope this was helpful for you. And if you have a Fokoos Odin-5, let us know what your experience is and leave a comment down below. And I'll see you again very soon. Okay.
We get bars in our goggles.